Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a slightly unhinged video. I have so many books stacked in front of me. I don't even know how many books there are. Over 30 books, just about, that I am going to try rapid fire and pitch to you as fall reads. Why? Just because they give me the vibe. These are all books that I have read. I am also planning on doing a part 2 to this video where I, on vibes alone, do this same thing for books that I have not read. So if you want to see that video, please let me know. It probably will be recorded and up within the same vicinity of this one, so watch out for that. But yes, so we're gonna get into it. I've divided them all into categories. Get ready for a video where I pitch you books as fast as I can, but we're gonna start with the tiniest category, which are middle grades. I got four. We got 4 middle grades that feel like fall to me. First one is Pages & Co. Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. This is the first of the Pages & Co. series by Anna James. This is an adorable little middle grade where our main character, Tilly, goes book wandering. It is absolutely wonderful. It is cozy. It begins, I think, on one of her breaks. It's gotta be a fall break or a winter break of some kind because it's dreary, it's cold. She's holed up in her grandparents' bookstore with a cup of tea. Like that's the vibe that you're gonna get with this one, and it's wonderful and it's literary, and she goes on little trips into books and makes friends with book characters like Anne of Green Gables. So how could you not? Oh my god, add another one onto this list that I didn't even grab. Anne of Green Gables, the best of all books. There you go. So there's that one. Then we have Spirit Hunters by Ellen O, which is a cute little middle grade that is also quite spooky. And that is exactly why I'm putting it on this list. I think it's set like pretty much in the summer. I can't quite remember, but it has the feeling of a like late summer autumn book to read for sure, because we have our main character, Harper, who moves into this new mansion with her parents, and the mansion is apparently haunted. There's this whole thing about her trying to deal with this haunting, and she also has a little brother who's starting to act a little bit funny. You know, spooky, perfect for this time of year. Also, this cover is just oozes fall. I love it so much. We have Some Kind of Happiness by Claire Legrand. This is also a wonderful little middle grade. It's probably one of my favorites that I've ever read ever. It has great mental health rep in children as well, which I don't think we see a lot of, especially with concerns on like anxiety and depression. Follows Finley, who is a creator, a writer, as she goes and lives with her cousins, I believe. It's been a long time since I read this. Grandparents. So she goes and lives with her grandparents and like has a bunch of cousins there, that she feels so alienated from them all because she just doesn't feel like she relates to them at all. But it's this beautiful little story where she kind of makes up this story for her cousins that they start playing out in the forest behind their grandparents' house, and it's a little bit eerie, but it's also interspersed with her writing as well in this story because she's also actively writing these stories. It's just precious and I love it. I love it so much. The last sentence on here is, as the mysteries pile up and Finley's reality and fantasy start to collide, she realizes that if she wants to save the Everwoods, she'll first have to save herself. It's beautiful. Then we have the first in a bunch of mysteries, and I believe the 4th one is out now. I have only read the first 2 and I need to get my hands on the next ones, but it is Aggie Morton Mystery Queen. It is based off of Agatha Christie's mysteries, especially this first one because it's based off of the Agatha Christie mystery about the body under the piano, I think, or the body. She's got one that's called The Body in the Something that is very similar to this. This is by Marthe Jocelyn, and, or if you want to say it in the English way, I don't actually know if she's French, Marthe Jocelyn. So I loved these. I read them a couple years ago around Christmas because the second one is Christmassy and wintry, but this first one has the perfect vibes of an Agatha Christie mystery, but in the package of a middle grade that is expertly written, and I had so much fun with these books. I highly recommend. It's set in 1902 seaside England. So wonderful. It's about Aggie Morton, who is quite solitary, making friends with a little boy named Hector. And Hector, of course, is Hector Perot, which I love the tie-ins to Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot. We love to see it, but love these. Let's move right into, we'll just do the adult ones because they're right in front of me. So first and foremost, if you want some weird, mind-bending fiction around this time of year, House of Leaves is where it's at. This I surprisingly really enjoyed. I didn't like the footnote story of Johnny's, I think his name is. I don't remember, but it was such an interesting read. And I think diving into a like slightly mind-bending story such as House of Leaves that has an almost like paranormal activity feel feel to it is perfect for this time of year. So this is a story inside of a story inside of a story. So it is the story about how Johnny, this guy, finds this bound manuscript, and it's his life around the manuscript and finding the manuscript and reading it. And then it's this story of the bound manuscript, and which is very interesting and written by this man who died, which is how Johnny found the manuscript. Then it's also the manuscript story about the Davidson record. I liked the Davidson record the most. And the Davidson record is like a record of a show that was, or a movie that was being aired or filmed. So it has just layers of life to it. I really liked it, which I'm really surprised I did, but I did. And it's perfect for this time of year for some mind-bending weirdness. Okay, I have some other thrillery mystery stuff. And oh, I should also say that this is just books that I own. I could go on forever about books that I don't own, but I've read. We're just gonna stick with these. I just remembered all the Riley Sager and the murdery books that I read last year, but we're just gonna keep going. The first one, of course, how could I not recommend this book? And in tandem, we're gonna recommend Dracula because it's one of my favorites, and Frankenstein because it's also another one of my favorite classics. But Dracula by Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker. This book is everything I want in a like horror book. I don't even know if I can call it horror. I just love it so much. It's got tension, it's got good pacing, it's got like real life clues that Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker pulled in from Bram Stoker, the guy who wrote Dracula, from Bram's like original manuscripts and stuff and notes and things that you can find at the end of the book here. There's like an author's note kind of situation of like the research that they did about Bram and his life. So this is essentially about Bram Stoker and his life. It's sort of like a biography, a fictionalized biography about the evils that Bram Stoker had encountered and inspired him to write Dracula. So, adored this. One of my favorite books ever. Oh, I don't know. Let's talk about this one next because it's kind of in the same realm, sort of. I don't know. It's The Marlowe Murder Club by Robert Thorogood. This is a cute little murder mystery where it centers around a 77-year-old main character who goes about her English town in her cape on her bike, and she's a crossword puzzle maker, which is pretty cool. Her and these two ladies band together and try to solve these murders that are happening in their town. It's kind of like, it's on the edge of cozy mystery, but it's also got some good like ambiance. I don't know. It's like an English seaside, has the feeling of fall. Now we're gonna get into the more atmospheric reads that I have for sure. The first one's one of my favorite books of all time, and that is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. I adore this book to no end. This feels like Jane Eyre, which is another really great one if you're looking for classics. I didn't include any classics on this list. I think any classic is pretty good around this time of year, just because it feels like this settling into a really thick, dense read like that. It's a perfect time of year for that. Anyways, this feels like Jane Eyre meets Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is just so good. I loved it. The beginning of this book had the feeling of being wrapped in a beautiful soft blanket with a cup of tea in hand. That's the perfect drinking temperature, and it feels like everything's kind of like you're reading by low light, and it's cool outside, not yet cold, but like crisp, and the leaves are starting to turn and crunch under your boots. That's what the beginning of this book felt like to me, and it was just exceptional. The rest of the book felt a little bit more wintry, but we're gonna include it anyways because this is one of my favorite books. Did I give you what this is about? No, I just pitched it as Jane Eyre meets Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So this is about Margaret Lee, who is a biography writer who is contacted by this lady named Vida Winter, who is very mysterious, a very mysterious writer. Has like famously never told her story about her life properly. She's always changed the story every time she's asked about it. She's aging, she's ailing, her health is failing, all this kind of stuff that rhymed. And she gets in contact with Margaret Lee for a specific reason and says, hey, I want to tell you the real story about my life and about Angel Fieldhouse. And so it is a very wild story about Angel Fieldhouse and the March family and Vida Winter herself. I love this book so much. Oh my god. Kate Morton's The Forgotten Garden. I rarely talk about Kate Morton on my channel because I don't know, she's just not my typical genre to read, but it feels like the same brand of fiction that The 13th Tale comes from. Because for this, we have Kate Morton is an expert at like multiple timeline type deals and like culminating it all into this really big, explosive, familial drama type of stuff. But this one just felt right. It again has a family at the center of it. It has like a big manor where this family lived, and there's secrets in this family. Our main character Nell is discovering this story from like more present day, and she's taken back to 1913 and like all these different timelines and kind of figuring this puzzle out. I remember reading this a couple years ago, around the time where like my university career was coming to an end. Reading this book, though I had not stopped reading at all, and I continued to read everything. Reading this book gave me the joy of reading again, which was just exceptional. And I loved this book. It was so good. But yeah, same brand as The 13th Tale. Another one that kind of feels like that brand is this one, The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz-Zafón. This book follows a young boy named Daniel. In Barcelona, back in the day, his dad takes him to this beautiful little bookshop. It's got a name. It's been a while since I've read this one. The Cemetery of Forgotten Books, that's what it's called. And he picks up this book that calls to him, and the whole thing with the Cemetery of Forgotten Books is that you take a book from it and you like cherish it with your life for the rest of your life. And he falls in love with this book, kind of sets him off on this journey to figure out what happened to the author and why his copy of the book seems to be the last one, or one of the last ones even out there. But there's somebody who's seemingly destroying all of this author's works. It's wonderful. It's so atmospheric, so lush. Again, kind of like a discovering a puzzle of this person's life, putting it together. I don't know what it is about those kind of books, but they just feel like it's meant to be read at this time of year. You know? This one next up, we have Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is the fictionalized retelling of Shakespeare's life, but with a focus on his son, Hamnet, who is a twin, and this is at the time of the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague? Black plague? Black death. I don't remember what they're, like, what if they're different, or, you know, like the plagues, but it's 1580, England, Black Death, people are dying, you know. It's also the love story between Shakespeare and his wife. Shakespeare's never named. We just know it's Shakespeare because Hamlet, and it's heavily alluded to that this playwright is Willie Shakes. Maggie O'Farrell has a grip on my soul that is like unother, and I've only read this book of hers. Like, she's so good. I adore her writing so much. This book blew me away. Prepare to cry with this one, for sure. Let's do this one. We Ride a Pine Sticks by Quan Berry. This one's really fun because it kind of brings in the school aspect of books as well. This is about the field hockey team from Danvers, Massachusetts, and it is set in the 80s. It's got lots of 80s iconography, and it follows the girls field hockey team. It is so weird. It's so weird, but it's so good at the same time because it has like touches of witchiness and like cultiness to it. This collective group of girls is slowly becoming one entity. It's wild. Highly recommend this. That's all I'm going to tell you about it because it's very good and I really enjoyed it. You got to read it to really get the feeling of it. Another one that I'm going to talk about today is The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. This is a reimagining of Mary Bennet's story. If there is a book for me, it's this one. I love this so much. It made me feel and realize that Mary Bennet is probably my favorite Bennet sister, other than Lizzie, because you cannot top Lizzie. This book was everything. So the beginning, like 20-30%, oh maybe, like a good part of the beginning is the reimagining of the events of Pride and Prejudice from Mary's point of view. The rest of the book is after the events of Pride and Prejudice, and it's Mary's story and her like becoming her own person, because we don't really get that in Pride and Prejudice, and I'm really glad that Janice Hadlow did that. And there's something about an Austen type book that is perfect for fall. I don't know why, it just is, but yes. Pick this one up. This is also like a really accessible way to get into Jane Austen literature if you're not comfortable with reading Jane Austen's prose. I love this one. This one's set for a reread very, very soon. All right, so now we're gonna get into the kind of more magical touches adult books. We got Amy McKay's The Witches of New York, which was just such a surprise read the year that I read it. I think it was last year or the year before, I can't remember. But this is set in 1880 New York, set around when Cleopatra's Needle is coming to New York. And it follows a trio of witches who live in New York, and they're kind of like their business at like helping all these women of New York kind of keep men at bay and this kind of a thing. Like they run an apothecary essentially for all these women. They help solve issues like that, and it's also their fight against this pastor who's there. So these two main witches trying to like help out this brand new girl who's like starting to join their shop for a job. It's wonderful. It's very good, very atmospheric, and there's not like a whole bunch going on, but it is wonderfully well paced and very quick to get through from what I remember. But yeah, it's Manhattan in 1880. And it's just what a gilded age of New York includes witchcraft. I love it. Next one is, I would pitch it as the better Outlander, but it is The Lost Queen by Signe Pike. So it is in the same branch as Outlander, which has like Scottish Highlands, romance, intense things, but it's also mixed in with the Arthurian and Merlin specific lore. So this follows, I don't remember how to say her name, I think it's Langareth, who is the like believed to be one of the biggest queens of from this old time. Oh, they don't give me the era on the back of the book, but she is believed to be the twin of the man who inspired the Merlin myth, Lilacin. It's them, it's their life. This one specifically is like her coming of age story, sort of. And then there's like Emrys Pendragon and the Old Way and Maelgwyn and like all these different things. And the vibe of it is Scotland, Highlands, in fall with like a little bit of dreary rain with all like the rolling highlands, you know, it gives me that vibe, which is why it feels like fall. So that is why. There is a pile of books on my floor. This is getting out of hand. All right, so the next one is the only YA contemporary that I have on this list, and that's because it is fall embodied, and that is If the Broom Fits by Sarah Sutton. I love Sarah Sutton's books. You guys know she's one of my friends and an author here on I was about to say TikTok. Nope. On YouTube. And this is one of her self-published books, and it's just exceptional. She has a way with words, and she has a way of making me believe in love again through YA books, which like never happens to me because I'm so tired of YA, but whenever I pick up one of her books, I know for at least the length of the book that I read, I'm gonna be in love with these kids being in love. And this little novella, short novel type of deal that is just packed full with fall vibes is just perfection. Follows Blair and Lucas, who just recently broke up, and they have to kind of still be together and yet not like in the relationship, but like still be around each other a lot, and they still really love each other. And it's like kind of a second chance romance, and it's like set around Halloween and like the Halloween like fair that they got going on in a festival situation, and it's just very good. It feels like drinking a pumpkin spice latte. That's what it feels like. We're gonna dive into the YA fantasy now because there's only a couple on my list, and then we're gonna dive into the biggest category on this list, which is my fantasy books. First up, we got Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. This is the author that wrote House of Salt and Sorrows, which is also another one that I would recommend, but I don't own. But this was so good. It is set all like over a year kind of a vibe, but like the slow, deep, late summer, autumn vibe of it just permeates every page. I read this in 3 hours one day, my guys, because I just couldn't put it down. It is eerie. It is enchanting. It is so good. The ending, I will say, is a little bit rushed, but the ending was explosive as hell. So this follows Ellery Downing and her family, and it is very deeply centered about this family of kids that Ellery is essentially like the eldest sibling of, her and her twin brother. And it's them trying to survive this year while keeping their bees, because they're also beekeepers, alive and safe while their mother and father essentially leave them because of a incident that happens in this book, and their father has to take their mother to another town to make sure that she doesn't die because there's some eerie shit happening in this friggin' world that they're around, okay? And it's wild. So they're surrounded by this forest that has like these creepy creatures coming out of it. So there's that like slightly magical touch to it. And then there's also small town, everyone knows your business horror vibes. This book is great. I think I need to reread this book the more that I think about it, because it's just, oh, it's one of those like slow burners. The back says, enter not the forest deep, beyond the bells the dark fiends keep. I just, Erin A. Craig, master of atmosphere, let me tell you. But yes, next up, how could I not include this on this list? Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. My guys, the sequel is coming out in November. I'm so excited about the sequel. I can't wait. I've like purposefully not pre-ordered it so that I can go get it on the day, so that I make sure that I have it in my hands the day that it's published, because sometimes my pre-orders don't arrive for like a week after. That's how excited I am about this book. I'm so amped. So this one is set at a like prestigious university, I think, but it follows like teenagers in like a high school program that's like set them in this university for a bit. I don't really remember, but it's got the dark academia feels right down. It's also an Arthurian retelling. Oh, and it's so good. This is one of my favorite YA books ever. So this follows Brie Matthews, and after her mother dies in a terrible accident, she wants nothing to do with her family memories or her childhood home. So she gets into a program at UNC Chapel Hill. First night she's there, she witnesses a magical demon attack. You know, as you do on your first night of university, you witness a magical demon attack. She gets kind of wrapped up in the society of Legendborn that has these Merlins who are magic users. She tackles, or tries to at least weather the storm that is this incredibly racist old white man run society. It's very good. It's so good. But yeah, definitely feels fall because of the, you know, academic vibe of it. We got Graceling by Kristen Cashore. This book is perfect, okay? Like, it's not like a perfect book, but it is my favorite of the Graceling series, I think. I really liked Bitter Blue. So who knows, it might need a reread. But it is the perfect old school feeling of fantasy wrapped up in a YA case of wonderfulness that always has like a dash of like yearning and angst. You know, this feels like fall to me because it just has that old school fantasy feel. I was actually talking to my friend the other day. I asked her basically like what a fall book feels like to her, and she said that it has to have like, there's a weird perfect intersection of like mystery, horror, cozy feeling, small town, and like whimsy. And I was like, yeah, for you for sure. For me, add in another branch and have like old school classic fantasy feel, right? And that's what this is. So in those intersections of fall feeling books, like you would have, like I think she recommended My Heart is a Chainsaw, which is another good one this time of year. This feels like YA perfect old fantasy style book. So this follows Katza, who has been able to kill a man with nothing but her bare hands since she was a very small child. She's a graceling, which are people in this world who have two different colored eyes, who have a grace, which is essentially like a really, really cool hobby power situation. You can literally have a grace in artistry or like musicianship, or like Katza, you can have a grace in killing. So you can just be like super freaking good at this stuff, and that's what hers is. So it's a story of her and Prince Po and them trying to do something for the king, and it's romance, and it's just good. It's so good, and that's what you want. You want fantasy that just is delicious to devour at this time of year. Am I not right? I'm right. Okay, talking about fantasy that's delicious to devour, let's get into it. Let's get into it, my guys. We're gonna do the V.E. Schwab corner first because I got 3 of her books that I think are perfect for this time of year. 1, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. How could I not talk about this book? It's wonderful. It's about Addie LaRue, who's been alive since friggin' forever, and like hundreds of years, I think. I don't remember when she was born. Yeah, hundreds of years, because she was born in France in the 1700s at some point in time, but in a moment of desperation, she makes a deal with the dark gods to essentially live forever, but in the deal, the dark god that takes this deal basically makes her not rememberable. Sure, we'll go with that. Where she is forgotten by anyone she ever meets ever. It will be 300 years before she stumbles into a hidden bookstore and discovers someone who can remember her name. And suddenly everything changes. It's wonderful, it's delightful, and it is so good. It's like slow moving and wonderful. It's got the vibe of V.E. Schwab's books, you know. Along that same train, Gallant is perfect for this time of year. This is a Crimson Peak, is that the word for it? Twin Peaks? Crimson Peak? That odd, unsettling vibe where it follows our main character, Olivia Pryor. Oh, I just love these drawings as well. Olivia Pryor, who ends up finding out that she is not an orphan. Well, she is an orphan, but that she has family who lives in this manor called Gallant, and there's something weird going on with Gallant. It's atmospheric as hell. That's all I'll give you for that, because, you know, there's not a lot going on in that book, but it's wonderful and quite spooky, and it's got that like tensiony dripping vibe that V.E. Schwab is very good at. Another one good for this time of year of hers is Vicious. If you haven't read Vicious by now, or haven't heard about it from a million people, it's about Victor and Eli, who were once best friends and college roommates essentially, and something went really wrong, and they are now mortal enemies, and they both have kind of extraordinary powers. So it has like the vibe of dark academia and just like morally gray villains, and yeah, it's perfect for this time of year because it feels like fall. Let's dive into this small smattering of fantasy books that I got around me. We will start with a psalm for the Wild Belt by Becky Chambers. So this, technically, I guess, is sci-fi? So please excuse me adding a sci-fi onto this list, but it feels fantasy-esque. It's set in a utopian world where robots have absconded from humanity to go live in the mountains, kind of a vibe, and it follows Dex, who is a tea monk who decides one day that they are not happy with their life and their story, and so they set out to try find something that will like spark that joy in them again. This little novella feels like a warm hug on an autumn day, sipping a mug of tea. And it is just delightful and will make you feel things in its really tiny little form. And it makes you question humanity, and it's filled with like philosophy, and it just makes you feel good about not knowing what the hell you're doing with your life, especially, you know, great for right now, for me at least, in my mid-20s. Life is confusing, so it was, when I first read this, it was just absolutely perfect timing. So loved this. The second book feels like a summer day, which is why I didn't include it on this list, so autumn. Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is a fun, crass, medieval feeling fantasy. I don't think the medieval is even right, but it feels like that. It's got like thieves and it's set in a almost Robin Hood-esque world. There's no magic. It's just gentlemen, bastards, and well, there might be magic. I can't remember. It's been a really long time since I've read this. It is like, you know, it's crass. It follows Locke Lamora and like his life story into where he's gotten to be, and it's so good. This is like my brand of humor as well. Love it. That's really all I can say about Lies of Locke Lamora. It feels like fall to me, so I included it on this list. Another one here is more of a recent read of mine, and that is The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean. This feels like the combination of one of those thriller movies that you can see on TV where the woman is running for her life for the whole thing. Feels like that, mixed with fairy tales turned on their heads. So this follows our main character, Devon, and her son as they are trying to escape this really patriarchal society of book eaters. They are not human, though they look human. They consume books exclusively. There's a branch of these book eaters that are born with these creepy ass tongues, and they are called mind eaters, and they do exactly that. They will eat someone's mind and suck it out of their brain, essentially, suck their soul out of them. Sometimes they kill them, kill the person through that process. Sometimes they don't. They just leave them as a shell. It's, you know, a game. Which one will happen? We don't know. In this, Devon is trying to protect her son, who is a mind eater, and she's also trying to escape the fact that he would have been taken from her at age 3 due to their society that they're in. She's trying to keep him alive, healthy, and also not get caught because she's helping him murder all these people. Essentially. It starts off with very like serial killer and serial killer apprentice vibes. It's very good. It feels like you're walking through the streets of a town of like London almost. I know it's in Yorkshire, but it feels like you're walking through town like that. You're wearing nothing but a jean jacket or a leather jacket, and it's like a little cold, so you like put it up over your like ears as you're walking in your fall boots. That's this vibe. It's very good. I really enjoyed that book. Dark Academia, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This has ghosts, dark academia, demon stuff, you know. It's set in Yale, but it follows Alex Stern, who can see these ghosts, and she's gotten recruited by one of Yale's secret societies. And in this book, she solves murders as well. That's really all you need. And the sequel's coming out next year, so get on it if you haven't. Okay, we're down to the last 4, my guys. I'm gonna try to do this quick. The next one is Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. This is a retelling of the Juniper Tree and has so many trigger warnings. My friends, please look them up before you read this. I didn't like this book, but I gave it 4 stars because it is a good book, if that makes any sense at all. It's dreary. It is bleak. There is very little happiness in this. It is very dark and feels like the perfect fall read. Truly, because of that atmosphere that you have. So it follows our main character Marlon Chen, who lives with her 2 sisters and their wizard father in a city slightly away from the city because magic is fading, and they have a little bit of magic left, and they do kind of things because they're like the last true witches of the city. They do things for the people there because each of the sisters have different powers. Their father is really abusive and really manipulative, and it's kind of the story of Marlon Chen breaking out of that cycle, finding love, sort of. I don't want to say love because that adds an automatic note of hope to it, but it's not hopeful at all. It's very dark, but it does feel like fall. And I included this one rather than The Wolf and the Woodsman because The Wolf and the Woodsman feels like winter to me. So there is that, but yes. Next up is my favorite book of all time, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This is kind of keeping on like the dark academia train. Our main character in this, Zachary Ezra Rollins, who at the beginning of this finds a book in his university library that has a story in it about Zachary's life. So it kind of sets him off to figure out like what's going on, and it takes him into this underworld library, and it's just delicious, and I love this book so much. It's due for a reread soon. I'm in my rereading era. It feels like, I don't know, it feels like a storybook. It feels like a slow sinking into a sea of honey. I know I say that every time I talk about this book, but that's what it feels like. And it just, it's so good. If you're into flowery writing and you're into not really knowing what's going on and stories inside stories inside stories, this is definitely a book for you. But if you don't like any of that, please don't read this. If you didn't like The Night Circus, don't read this. The Night Circus is also a good choice. The Night Circus. This is, you know, there's the title, but also a good choice. This one felt more fall to me than that one because of the like university setting and the library setting and all that. All right, the last 2 kind of go in hand, and really this is the last 4, because how could I have a video that's talking about books that feel like fall without talking about the books that made fall feel like fall? Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, The Hobbit. They're so good. This is where the classic fantasy feeling comes in. They're cozy. Well, this one specifically is quite cozy. I mean, they're all very cozy. Like, The Fellowship of the Ring is one of the coziest travel stories ever. Like, who wouldn't want to be a hobbit in a hobbity hole and just like one day decide, I want to go on an adventure and run off with your dwarf and elven friends and your one wizard guy and the one human guy. You know, who wouldn't want to do that? But these feel like fall. They just do. They're comforting. It feels like Tolkien is sitting next to you telling a story by the fire. You cannot go wrong with Tolkien. All right, my guys, that is it from me. I have now talked for an extremely long time. It is almost an hour after I started filming this, and I tried to go really, really fast. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you got at least one recommendation out of this list, but please let me know down below even more books that you think feel like fall, because I want to add to my list, and fall is my favorite season, so why not keep reading books that feel like fall? But yes, there will also be a video at some point. I talk about the books that are on my TBR that, with no reason whatsoever, feel like fall. I will see you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.